Robert Pickton was born in 1949 in Port Coquitlam in British Columbia. He, along with his brother and sister, were raised by their parents on a big pig farm. In the 1970s, their parents passed away, and so the property was handed down to them. Robert and his brother took over the daily operations of the farm, but it fell into decline. They managed to sell off almost all of their property for over $5 million. And so they established an official charity in 1996 called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society. What it ultimately became was a guise to host these wild and alcohol-fueled parties inside of their slaughterhouse, drawing crowds of up to 2,000 people. Women from the downtown east side began disappearing in droves. When the police were finally contacted, the police said it was reasonable to assume that the women were to blame, that their lifestyles must have caught up with them. 1 year after the Piggy Palace had been stood up, the Picton's neighbor heard a frantic knock on their front door. And what they saw was this woman who was hunched over with one hand on her bleeding stomach, and dangling from her wrist was a handcuff. The woman was rushed to the hospital. Afterwards, she told her nurses she had been at one of those Piggy Palace parties, and one of the owners of the farm, Robert Pickton, had tried to put a handcuff on her. She fought back. He stabbed her in the stomach. She was able to get the knife back. She stabbed him in the face before turning and running out the door. Robert Pickton actually showed up at the exact same hospital with a serious laceration on his face that was consistent with being stabbed. And so when the police saw that, they arrested Robert on attempted murder. While Robert was in custody, he explained to officers that Wendy was lying. The police believed him and dropped all of his charges and let him go. Over the next few years, the Pictons continued to throw these huge Piggy Palace parties until the city finally shut them down, and dozens more women disappeared. Finally, in 2002, a former employee of the Picton farm came forward to police and said that he had seen illegal weapons inside of Robert's trailer, and they found blood from one of the missing women inside of Robert's trailer. Robert was arrested and charged with murder. While he was being held in jail, he shared his cell with another man. He was actually an undercover police officer, and their entire interaction was being recorded. After a lengthy investigation, it was determined Robert's killing spree began in 1991, but it really kicked up a notch in 1996 when he and his brother started Piggy Palace. And once they were at his farm, he would lure them into his trailer, and he would inject antifreeze into them, or he would strangle them to death. A large portion of his victims' remains would be fed to his pigs, and the parts he didn't feed to his pigs, he would bring to the rendering plant. A rendering plant takes animal waste products and turns them into a gelatin. This gelatin is used in candy to cosmetics. Also, sometimes he would set aside some of the best cuts of meat and grind them up with pork and turn them into sausage. This sausage was served at Piggy Palace parties. It was also given to neighbors and food banks and orphanages. Robert was charged with all 26 murders, but only 6 turned into convictions due to a lack of evidence. His brother and sister were never charged in connection with the crimes.